It's clear that humanity has many problems, and horrible things happen to people occasionally. Nevertheless, I have a deep love for humanity, and I believe that we should all work together to create a bright future that optimizes people's happiness. Nobody could think of anything to increase our chances of success when we debuted. We searched high and low for any method that would increase the likelihood of success, but we were at a loss for ideas. NASA was unable to either. Thus, it is the best we could do. Then we actually launched. Even though I don't practice religion, I knelt down and prayed for that mission. First of all, it was a huge relief when the launch went well and they made it back to Earth. And I believe that the later asteroid flights were far more fun once we were more at ease and had figured out the systems. You really had to make sure everything functions. Furthermore, I found the inspiration aimed to be quite motivating. I would recommend that individuals view the Netflix documentary Inspiration, which serves as the inspiration for mission. It's not really that good, but it's really extremely good. That truly gave me some inspiration. With that one, I felt like I was able to enjoy the mission itself rather than just being constantly freaked out. For those who are unaware, it's the first ever all-civilian out-to-space, out-of-orbit experience. It was the highest orbit in, like, 30 or 40 years or something, I believe. The Hubble servicing mission was the only one that was higher, and that was the one shuttle, and it would have been Apollo in 1972 before that. It's cool because it was kind of crazy. It's excellent. As a species, I believe we want to keep improving and rising to new heights. In my opinion, it would be terribly unfortunate if Apollo served as humanity's pinnacle, and that was the extent of our progress. And it's troubling that we haven't returned to the moon nearly 50 years after the last expedition, which was 49 years ago. Furthermore, I believe that we ought to return to the moon and establish a science facility there. If we established a legitimate science base on the moon, I believe we could discover a great deal about the nature of the cosmos. We have science facilities in numerous locations across the globe, including Antarctica. That's why I believe that a significant black moon base is the next important item we need to have, followed by sending humans to Mars to establish a spacefaring civilization. I mean, I suppose some people would know during the actual launches, but a lot of people are unaware that I am SpaceX's top engineer. Therefore, I've approved almost every design choice. Thus, if something goes wrong with that car, it's basically my fault. I'm essentially just considering everything that might possibly go wrong and everything that may be improved when I see the rocket. Likewise, this applies to the Dragon spacecraft. Some may comment, oh, this is a rocket or spacecraft, and it looks really cool. I feel like I've been given a rundown of the dangers and issues. That's what I observe. In actuality, engine production, rather than engine design, is by far the most important factor in solving my time. Prototypes are easy, but manufacturing is hard, I have remarked many times. We therefore own the most sophisticated rocket engine ever created, as the best rocket engine available right now is perhaps the RD-170, or more specifically, the dual Russian engine. Nevertheless, in my opinion, an engine should only be considered functional if it has successfully launched an object into orbit. Thus, although nothing has yet been sent into orbit by our engine, it is. It's the first engine to truly outperform the incredible Russian RD engines in terms of design. To get this engine to run, we had to create numerous new alloys because it requires a lot of unique materials and a lot of components. It is a matter of materials. There are numerous feedback loops in the system during a stage combustion, namely during the full flow stage of combustion. In essence, hot gas and Prop B are flowing simultaneously to numerous locations within the engine, and they all interact with one another recursively. Hence, if you make one adjustment in one place, it affects other places as well. Something gets changed over there. It's also quite difficult to regulate. There's a reason why this has never been made before. Additionally, a stage combustion complete flow has the best theoretical efficiency, which is why we are using it. Therefore, everything needs to be the greatest in order to create a fully reusable rocket, which is essentially the holy grail of orbital rocketry. It must have the best heat shield, engine, airframe, avionics, and control systems available, all of which are incredibly light. You must reduce your body weight in any manner that is feasible. For instance, in order to conserve the weight of the landing legs, we will catch them with a to power rather than attaching them to the booster and ship. However, our team is incredibly talented. They're putting in a lot of overtime to make it happen. Like I mentioned, having an orbital rocket that is fully and quickly reusable is essential to bringing about a revolution in space travel and enabling mankind to become a spacefaring society. Not a single orbital rocket has ever been completely reusable, and in rocketry, this has always been the holy grail. And since this is such a challenging problem, many brilliant people, very brilliant people, have attempted to solve it in the past without success. I'm not the type to give up easily. The Tesla bot needs to figure out how to communicate with people and maybe even have a location like a house. Interacting thus means not just taking over labor, but also, I don't know, serving as a buddy or an assistant. I believe there are countless options. Making a practical humanoid robot that can interact with the outside world and assist in a variety of ways is an immensely helpful thing that we can do for the world, even though it obviously falls outside of Tesla's primary mission direction of developing sustainable energy. Therefore, I believe that in factories, and truly basically, if you extrapolate to a lot of years in the future, work will become optional. Many jobs are ones that people wouldn't perform if they weren't compensated to. If you spend all day doing dishes, it's not really enjoyable. You know, even if you love doing the dishes, do you really want to spend 8 hours a day, every day doing it? Most likely not. And then there is that sort of risky work. Basically, the areas where humanoid robots would initially be most useful are those that are hazardous, dull, or have the potential for repetitive stress injuries. Therefore, our goal is to have humanoid robots perform tasks that people would not willingly undertake. I haven't given the Tesla bot, or its codename, Optim, much thought in terms of the future. Us. I refer to it as Optimus Supreme because it's designed to be a general-purpose assistance robot rather than a massive transformer robot. Additionally, I believe there was a possibility of hazard with the devices that were essentially Tesla. The number of interventions per million kilometers has been steadily declining, and it appears that this trend will continue into the upcoming year. The likelihood of an accident occurring on FSD is comparatively lower than that of the typical human, and notably lower than that of the average human. So, it seems very likely that we will arrive there the following year. Subsequently, it will become necessary to demonstrate to regulators that this is true, and we want a standard that is not only on par with human performance, but significantly superior to it. Before we would actually say, okay, it's okay to go, I believe it has to be at least 2 or 3 times greater than a person and 2 or 3 times lower probability of injury than a human. It will not be comparable. It will be a lot better. It appears that FSD 10.6 was released not too long ago. There will be a Tesla FSD 11 10.7 soon. Perhaps 11 is coming at some point in the future. 11 really contains several basic enhancements to vector space creation, as well as a number of fundamental rewrites on the neural net design. A single stack to rule them all, that would be SP11. However, a few very basic modifications to neural net architecture will provide considerably greater capabilities. They will initially run into problems such as, we have this working on sort of alpha software, which is good, but essentially involves replacing a significant amount of C++ code with a neural net by leading a large amount of C++ code. Andrew often brings up the notion that, in a sense, software is gradually being consumed by neural networks. There is a growing shift from traditional software to neural net software, which is still software but produces more neural net content and less Harris in general. In the last 6 years, or maybe even longer in your mind, and the thoughts of those involved, Tesla Autopilot has undergone an amazing trip. The AI team behind Tesla Autopilot is really skilled. It resembles some of the world's most intelligent individuals. So yes, we are finishing Autopilot. The self-driving challenge proved to be more difficult than I had anticipated. It's not as simple as I had imagined. It was actually much harder than I had anticipated. I had assumed it would be extremely difficult using it. When it comes down to it, the only way to solve the problem of autonomous driving is to essentially recreate how humans drive. that is, using optical senses, eyes, and biological neural nets. To that end, the entire road system is built to function with essentially passive optical and neural nets biologically. Therefore, in order for full autonomous driving to function, we must recreate that in digital form, which entails using cameras with advanced neural nets in silicon form. It will then obviously solve for small cell driving. To create an accurate vector space, you must first come from image space, which is like this flow of photons going to the cameras. Since you have this massive bit stream in image space, you must then effectively compress the massive bit stream corresponding to photons that knocked off an electron in a camera sensor and turn that bit stream into a vector space by vector space. In my opinion, these kinds of control logic conundrums are not the hard part of this whole beautiful complex problem. I mean, you've got cars and humans and lane lines and curves and traffic lights, and that kind of thing. Once you have an accurate vector space, the control problem is similar to that of a video game like a Grand Theft Auto or Cyberpunk. If you have accurate vector space, it's the control problem is I wouldn't say it's trivial, it's not trivial. But it's not like some insurmountable thing. Having an accurate vector space is very difficult. Your brain is doing an incredible amount of processing and giving you an image that is a very cleaned up image. Like when we look around here, you see color in the corners of your eyes. But actually, your eyes have very few cone receptors in the peripheral vision. Your eyes are painting color in the peripheral vision. And then even once you get all those vision signals, your brain is constantly trying to forget as much as possible. So human memory is perhaps the weakest thing about the brain is memory. So because memory is so expensive to our brain and so limited, your brain is trying to forget as much as possible and distill the things that you see into the smallest amounts of information possible. So your brain is trying to not just get to a vector space, but get to a vector space that is the smallest possible vector space of only relevant objects. You can sort of look inside your brain, or at least I can when you drive down the road and try to think about what your brain is actually doing consciously. It's like you'll see a car because you don't have cameras, you don't have eyes in the back of your head or the side. So you say like your head is like you basically have like two cameras on a slow gimbal and eyesight. Isn't that great? Okay, human eyes are. And people are constantly distracted and thinking about things and texting and doing all sorts of things they shouldn't do in a car, changing the radio station. When's the last time you looked right and left and rearward or even diagonally forward to actually refresh your vector space? So you're glancing around, and what your mind is doing is trying to distill the relevant vectors, basically objects with a position and motion, and then editing that down to the least amount that's necessary for you to drive.